This is so bold, but do you think your Harvard education was worth it?
Great question.
Welcome to Richer Lives, the show that teaches you how to use money to live your best life. I'm Vivian Tu, aka your Rich BFF, and I'm here today with the woman, the myth, the legend, Yara Shahidi.
Hi.
Yara, thank you so much for being here today.
I'm really grateful to be here.
We're going to have so much fun, but before we get into it, for those of us watching at home who haven't heard of you, you are an actress known for your roles on Blackish, Grownish, Peter Pan and Wendy, and more. You're a producer, you're an activist and a philanthropist, and a little fun fact, a Harvard alum. I mean, anything I missed?
I think that covers it. I'm a big sister.
Oh, that's a good one. Do you like being a big sister?
I love it. I take it way too seriously.
Talking about your family, you had great examples of artistic success from your parents. Can you tell us the lessons you learned from them and how that shaped your view of money?
So one of the first lessons I had learned very early on was the fact that my parents sat me and my brothers down as soon as we started making any form of money and had 3 buckets of save, spend, donate. And we were allowed to, with an allowance, figure out how we were going to divvy it up. And it was such a nice, basic way to start thinking about the different ways you can use your money. It was what allowed us to have even language for what money meant at a young age.
Yeah. Was there any specific money or career lesson, aside from just splitting up your allowance, that you've taken on into your life today?
Well, I think some of it, and why this conversation is so exciting, is the idea of having money conversations to begin with. We were always talking about money. And it wasn't a way to define our lives, but it was just like, let's get comfortable. When I was on Blackish, it's quite common that you get a check and it gets sent to your team right away. And then your team divvies up their percentages and then it lands in your account. And the one thing that mommy had us do pretty early on was go meet the accounting team. And I'd go pick up my check every week so that I could see how much there was. And sure enough, even in that time, I was like, oh wait, they put too much in my Coogan account. But it was because I had such an awareness. We were able to find that balance where it was never a money paranoia. It was never oh, I have to track what's happening at all times. But there was a real confidence. Even to this day, there's so much that I have to be reminded of and learn about money, but it's the fact that there's always a dialogue and I always have an open forum to be like, can you remind me when we're talking retirement, what's the difference between a Roth and a this and a that? It lessened some of the fear. And I feel like that's the biggest thing, especially in my 20s, is like, there's a big fear around money.
Yeah. And your family having been in the entertainment industry, do you think that was an advantage?
Yeah, well, I think financially speaking, the real benefit was not only having family in the entertainment industry, but the fact that they're multi-hyphenates and had an awareness of business. I think that was the biggest thing because they were able to help make certain decisions like having a lawyer negotiate salaries. And that may sound really random, but within entertainment, not everybody has a lawyer work for them because there's that feeling of, oh, the lawyer takes 5%. But the lawyer helps you make money you would have never even dreamed of by advocating on your behalf. Now, that's an ideal relationship, but I think those were the things that they had an awareness of that really worked to my advantage at a young age because it meant that I was more equipped to getting what I deserved. I came in with higher salary because I had a lawyer negotiating on my behalf, but that was only because they had an awareness of how the percentages worked.
Were there any cultural values, knowing that your parents come from differing backgrounds, that you were able to incorporate into your now relationship with your finances?
I have an anomaly of 2 parents that were very aware of the cultural values that they were raised with. Amongst my extended family, it's not as though we're always having money conversations and that there's super transparency between everybody. And so, if anything, it was them kind of going against some of the cultural norms of you don't talk about money. We equate being humble with not having certain conversations versus viewing them as these are just factual educational conversations. They're not to highlight how much someone has, doesn't have. For me, even culturally, I think I've always been uber pragmatic financially, even from a very young age. The way I have to be convinced into buying something.
Where do you think that comes from?
I mean, I think some of it is cultural. Some of it is that feeling of like, if you are a first generation of any kind, in terms of whether it's being a first-generation American on my Bubba's side, on my father's side, being Iranian, carrying the pressure that I think we all carry of knowing that I'm doing this work and trying to make an income for more than just me, there is definitely a sense of wanting to be super pragmatic, wanting to be super careful. And I think the thing that I've been learning now is that continuous balance of quality of life while still being pragmatic.
Yeah.
Because I think I would do that to such an extent where it's like, now this isn't even, you've surpassed practical.
Yeah.
If you need a laptop for work, Yara, and you've already set that aside and thought it through, you can get one and the guilt is not servicing you.
It sounds like you are so good with money. You're super responsible. Was there ever a time where you felt like you made a money mistake?
My biggest money mistake was really a friendship mistake because I'd go out to eat with people and I'd always wanted this bill to be split exactly in half. So whatever they got, I'd get. First of all, that means this is how we're eating. Nice pasta, y'all have that. So I'd have to say the reason I think of that as a money mistake is because I think it was changing the experience and it was—
You were hyper-focused.
I was hyper-focused on the minutia instead of either having a conversation or adjusting in other ways.
Yeah.
I really hope that my friends did not notice. I never circled back once I grew out of that era to see how obvious that was.
Like the stress just showing on your face.
Yeah,
of like,
I'm like, I'll take that too.
Yeah.
And so that's where I've definitely grown to be like, no, I'd rather be someone that has a conversation.
Yeah.
We're all at different financial levels in order to enjoy the friendship rather than making it this unspoken big thing about not knowing who's stretching to make it here, who's not thinking twice about how expensive it is to make it here. It's been nice to know those things. And it's not about getting into the details of, okay, what was your income this week? But it's really about what is your comfort level? Because even just for the sake of our friendship, I want us to be able to enjoy hanging out together.
Did those conversations initially cause any tension because maybe one person makes a lot more and one person makes a lot less?
A lot of those conversations, I can't say they happened proactively at all.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, we sat down, we talked about it, and then we're like, great, good.
Yeah.
It came down to being like, Uber's expensive.
Yeah.
We live in a city that doesn't have great public transportation. That's something we're going to take into account, whether it's I'm driving to whatever the location is. We don't talk about how expensive it is just to exist. I'm not talking about
you walk outside, it's $100.
Yeah, I'm not talking about being an actor or like even traveling anywhere. I'm talking about I want to go see that friend. How much does it cost to get from this place to this place?
And a pizza maybe together.
Right. Because the pizzas here are artisan, made in a special oven, and there's an upcharge
sugar-free, gluten-free, dairy-free,
No, but truly, that's where I continually encourage having financial conversations with friends because I think I have friends that have money I could only dream of. The difference between how I move and how they move is very different. And I've had to find a comfort level within that of being like, this is what makes me comfortable about how I use my money. So I think everyone finds themselves in situations one way or another where you have to have developed your own money values.
There's levels to this.
Levels to it.
We're learning so many money lessons from you, but I've got another money lesson to share. I'm about to teach you how to use your emergency fund to treat yourself, responsibly, of course. Let's break it down. A fully funded emergency fund should cover around 3 to 6 months of expenses. We're gonna say that's $10,000. If you put that $10,000 emergency fund into an account with a 0.1% APY and didn't touch it for a year, you'd make $10 in interest. Yeah, that's it. And if you got the average checking account interest rate, you'd make even less money. Let's see what happens if you put that money in a SoFi vault with its highly competitive APY. That's enough for your emergency fund to treat you out to a night on the town. You might think this is too good to be true, but it's not. This is just one way that online banks stay competitive and attract you to keep your hard-earned money with them instead of the old traditional banks. So move your money to a place where it will work for you. Switch to SoFi and start earning the interest you deserve. Sign up with SoFi at sofi.com/richerlives. I do want to talk a little bit about that pragmatism.
Yeah.
For someone who is very, very practical, as a little kid, what made you want to get into acting? Or was that something that your parents just put you in and you ended up being good at?
We started in commercials and print. And this is something that I actually continuously say to everybody I thoroughly enjoyed my time in commercials and print. When you're a young kid in a commercial, not only can you only work a couple hours because of labor laws, so many times like the task was playing on set. And so I think as a family, it filled two buckets of they were very aware of wanting to give myself and my brother some sense of financial independence. And it was also this kind of low lift thing where I continued to get experiences of meeting certain friends, of even learning how to be on a set or in a work environment. And so we were in printing commercials, and it wasn't until I was 7 that I auditioned for my first movie. And at first I said, Absolutely not. I loved what I was doing. And my agents called me again and just said, please just read the script. And so I read the script. It was for a movie that eventually was called Imagine That, and I played Eddie Murphy's daughter. But it was about a young girl in an imaginary world, and what it fulfilled again was that idea of just being a 7-year-old wanting to have fun.
Yeah.
And so I ended up having such a wonderful time on set, and I think that's what gave me the general bug to then start pursuing film and TV. But I'd have to say within that, there was just such an incredible amount of privilege because I was able to opt in and out. My parents were very clear that it's like acting is something that you do, it's not who you are. And so even when I'd made that jump at 7, my entire life didn't then get re-anchored around acting as a career. I was still in school full-time, in Tung Sudo, in every kind of hobby, living my full life as a kid.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until auditioning for Blackish and then joining the Blackish cast that I had an experience that really made me re-anchor my life around acting, because it was an 8-month plus commitment to filming 24 episodes of television.
Yeah. Do you have any stories of like your parents protecting you in the industry, your boundaries, your time? Be like,
Constantly.
hey, she has to go to chess club tonight. Like,
well, that's something that they actually joke about. Like, to know my family is to know that we take our outside lives and the rest of our lives very seriously.
Yeah.
It wasn't always neat and simple. It wasn't always like, great, come in at another time.
Right.
But I think as people continued to learn that for us, being a family is important, being kids was important to us, having this kind of balance was important, people that we worked with continued to respect it and slowly adjust and already know, if Yara has a test, the Shahidis are not coming in for an audition. Even on Blackish, the way they'd have to literally schedule it around the fact that I would have 3 days of AP exams, and they knew, okay, I'll be back this day. It was because they knew from the get-go how important my education was to me, and because, you know, we were so uncompromising about what that looked like, even in a set environment. Luckily, it's what laid the groundwork for me to be able to even go to school while I was filming a show, because it's pretty unheard of since contractually you have to be in LA filming. So it took a lot of people being invested, but some of it came from having to model that through example of being invested in my own journey and saying, this is what this looks like. This is why, you know, I only want to act if I can also follow my curiosity in these other spaces.
Looking back, would you recommend starting your career so young to someone else?
The journey is so individual. I'd have to say it's hard. It's hard to say. This is kind of answering the question, but I think in my dream of dreams, there's a big industry shift. The reason I was able to enjoy my career at a young age was solely because I had these creative but self-employed parents that were able to maintain their careers while I was on set. And I think so many times the heartbreaking stories that you hear about kids on set and feeling like you have to work to sustain your family is because what's unspoken about in this industry is that one parent has to be with you on set until the age of 16. And no one's gonna ask, how is that parent making money? How does that affect the rest of your family? What does that mean about added childcare? They're not asking, but we always see the results, and we're here to villainize the results of like, why was that child's income being used? Because studios aren't asking. People aren't asking, producers aren't asking. How does this work? You know, my career was only possible because my parents were able to set it up so that we had either family members or people that were helping us that were on set with another brother that were looking after me, where they were able to dip out and do things for themselves. And so it was under that environment where I was able to have a fulfilling career at a young age and even be in my 20s and say, I'm happy I started that young. But it was so particular to being under those set of circumstances, which allowed me to enjoy acting as a craft versus as something I had to do.
And I have to imagine, like, that's going to lead to a disparity of what type of young actors actually get to take on these roles and these opportunities. And unfortunately, it means that parents who can't afford to have one person be on set for that many hours, like, they don't get the same opportunities.
No, absolutely. And I think when you break it down, there's obviously gender discrepancies, racial discrepancies, and it's very real because when you think about how much money you have to stay in this industry to say, I'm going to keep trying, because it's pretty normal for actors to have a job and then not for years. To have a consistent stream of income and then it just changes. Or to say, you know, as my team is growing now, 35% of what I make goes outside immediately before I even get my check. It takes such a deep level of investment. And I think about even my own audition process at this age. If I want to coach for an audition, it's costing me money to put myself up for things. And, you know, now with the strike, they changed some of that to say, I promise you don't have to tape anywhere fancy. You can tape at home. But even that, you're saying I just have a homie that can read with me and this light setup and this and this, that it's like, it's still kind of the unspoken thing that you're spending money just to participate.
Yeah. You started when you were just 6. How has the process of handling your money changed? Obviously, you had mom and dad's help when you were 6. You were like, hey, mom and dad. But like, what about now?
So I was 6 when I had auditioned for my first movie, but I was 6 weeks old when I did my first photo shoot.
You can't remember. You can't possibly remember that.
Oh, no, the air was brisk. It was a beautiful day. I had a great time on set. No, I do not remember.
Yeah, of course not.
It was a photo shoot for life insurance ad.
Oh, cute.
Which is telling. I guess I started
practical.
I started this industry talking about money. Yeah, pragmatic, practical. But it's always looked different. I think, like you're saying at the beginning, I had parental support and I was very involved in those kind of beginner conversations of like, it's tax season. What does that look like for me? What's the difference between gross and what you walk away with? Because it's helpful to know. I know oftentimes I still kind of revert to a way of thinking where I'll be like, okay, I made this much from this. So, okay, I guess I can spend X amount. And I'm not necessarily thinking about the big picture. I'm just kind of piecemealing. And so I think that's been something that I've been trying to actively get out of. Like, stop piecemealing. In order to move from a more empowered place, instead of this place of how much do I have, is it still going to be there, it's really been about having continued conversations. There's a natural ebb and flow to a year in which I filmed, let's say, 18 episodes of television in a row, to a year in which it's like, okay, I filmed a movie, I did an endorsement thing. It looks very different year to year. And so I think having an awareness of what that looks like and becoming comfortable with that ebb and flow and figuring out what's the baseline that I need for myself to feel confident has helped me maneuver both in terms of my money, but also in terms of career and making sure I maintain a level of confidence about career choices and not feeling like I've put myself in some sort of predicament. So now I just have to
take whatever's available. Yeah. Okay, so I want to talk about some shows that are my favorite that you've been in particular, Zoe in Blackish and Grownish. What was it like transitioning from a supporting character to kind of a lead role?
Yeah, it was a really big transition. I mean, I'm grateful to have been on a set where I had great examples in front of me of what it meant to be a lead actor between Anthony, Tracy, Lawrence, my incredible TV grandparents. And so really learning by example, but the commitment looks very different. I went from being a kid on set that was doing more school than even filming to suddenly working 17-hour days.
Right.
So it was an abrupt transition from working a cute 10 hours
We're
to
treating
17.
you like an adult.
Yeah. And so, you know, I'm happy that I had support that, you know, prioritized just who I am as a kid. And I had, you know, the creator of the show. I remember one time we were on hour 17 and we still had 2 scenes to film in our first season.
Oof.
I remember one day he just like quietly turned off all the lights on set and we're like, we're done here. We're done. We're calling it a day. And so luckily I had people that were very protective, but it was a huge transition. And it was something where I really had to learn what I needed for myself. And it didn't come easily, but I think it's when I really had to double down on taking care of myself. My goal continues to be to take care of myself as well as the people around me take care of me, because I often find that I'm most willing to compromise what I need to just sustain in a way that the people that care for me would never consider compromising. Yeah, she needs to eat, or you need rest. You need a moment to rejuvenate. And so I think Grownish was really an immersive act of figuring out how do you take care of yourself amidst just what a set experience requires.
I mean, it just sounds like you had such an amazing, supportive community, everyone from your IRL parents to your on-screen family. Like, were there any money lessons that you learned from your on-screen family?
Well, I think some of the on-screen lessons were part of like constant hustle. And I think, again, it came from the fact that we all had similar money values and similar kind of cultural values. But I even remember my TV dad, Anthony Anderson, people don't even realize how hard he hustled even in the first season of Blackish. And you may think, you're a lead actor, you're a producer on this show. But, you know, in all of his free time, he was thinking about what the next project was. What was the thing that he was going to produce, create, and self-generate. And I think that perspective was really helpful because there's oftentimes a feeling of comfort you can get in an industry that is often so unstable that it was interesting to be surrounded by people that focused on self-generating opportunities. Here, this opportunity has been given to us. So how do you use this space and the resources you have because of this to start thinking about the next thing? How to jump peak to peak. So rather than waiting for the valley of nothing happening, how do you jump while you're at the height of something to your next thing?
Going from Blackish to Grownish, was it really hard to take on a new opportunity and saying goodbye a little bit?
Yes and no, in that we filmed on the same lot. So saying goodbye was a 20-step walk from one lot to the next.
Not too bad.
Which definitely helped. But I think it really was a challenge because there's certain things that you kind of get used to of even on Blackish, some of the gift of being number 5 on the call sheet and being a part of an ensemble was the fact that there was so much of my life that I lived outside of Blackish. Once Grownish came around, the schedule was so glaringly different because Blackish, I was like, I traveled a couple days, I came back to set, I worked, and then I went off and did something else, whereas Grownish, when you're the lead, within the first 2 seasons, I was in what they call A's storyline and B storyline. So both of the stories in each episode, where typically you have different characters rotating between the two, I was in all of them. And so it really required a strategic reconfiguring to figure out how to not lose the things that I love that kept me motivated to even be an actor. Like I always have liked and enjoyed the contrast, and the contrast has made me enjoy both worlds even more.
As you've had to kind of invest more and more and more of yourself onto these sets and these shows, was pay ever a consideration in that transition of like, yo, I'm like working a lot more now. You guys should pay me more, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think not only did we have to feel comfortable and I have to feel comfortable having those money conversations, but I think it's important for anyone to have kind of an advocacy team. It could be professional or it could be your homies. But I think a team that helps arm you with how to have certain conversations, how to be thinking about money, because it's hard to assign yourself a value.
And women are really, really bad at it. We're so much better at advocating for our girlfriends, our family, but we're horrible at advocating for ourselves.
Absolutely. I understand. I think it feels strange. I think culturally and socially it goes against so much of what we're told to say, hey, I'm worth this much. I could assume for most of us that our highest number is probably lower than we should be. When I transitioned, obviously there was a pay increase, but I think it was different to then work all those hours and then start to think about
what's the hourly rate?
When you start to break it down. I know for me, part of it was why it was also important to continue to diversify my income. I'll do public speaking for a certain amount or the fashion and endorsement space. And so I think that also allowed me to enjoy acting and not be so concerned about the hourly as it felt like, is my hourly getting smaller every moment I'm on set for this long? And still, there were moments in which as a team, it was like, hey, at this point, I'm executive producing and I'm putting in the work, I'm acting, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. How do we start to assign value to that? What does that look like? And some of it was directly financial and some of it was quality of life experiential. Sometimes when you hit certain money caps, it was more so about how do I make this time something that's enjoyable. So how do I make set an enjoyable space, whether it be as simple as my trailer or what I need outside to make sure that I'm running at 100% capacity. And so that's kind of, I think, how we've continued to see negotiating, not even in the television space, but in every space. It's kind of like there's the experiential quality of life part, and then there's the hard money of it.
Let's take a quick moment to talk about another way to build a richer life. Have you ever looked in the lost and found for any of your money that's gone missing? Maybe you should, because over 30 million people have unclaimed money or assets, including cash sitting in dormant bank accounts. Can you really know how you're doing financially if you can't even remember all of your accounts? Yeah. I didn't think so. It's so much easier to keep track of your money when it's all in one place. That's why you should switch to SoFi. With SoFi, you can bank, borrow, track your finances, and more all in one place. You can even add in accounts like your 401k, IRAs, plus track the value of your car and house. That way, none of your hard-earned money ends up in that lost and found. Go to SoFi.com/richerlives to start keeping track of all your money today. Okay, so let us move away from your illustrious acting career, but also talk about something that you're just as passionate about, your activism. Talk to us a little bit about why it was so important for you to use your platform and the power you had to continually uplift your community and make a difference.
Some of it was just because that was what was modeled for me. I come from a family of educators. I come from a family of creatives, all of whom have found ways to be of service to their community. And so I think the reason why it felt so natural once I was on Blackish and Grownish and I had this platform of my own was because we had started these conversations at such a young age. I really think that is the continuity in my life. When it was just dinner table conversation and my impact was what could I do at school, to when I had this very large platform, we're still having conversations on how to be of service. The thing that I had learned from Mommy immediately was she always talks about the fact that abundance must flow. It's not ours to keep and hoard, it's ours to enjoy and it's ours to pass on. And so I'd learned that lesson at a young age, and it'd be certain things like every year it was up to me and my brother to choose an organization to donate to for Christmas instead of typical Christmas gifts, and we'd make a special card for it and tell people why that cause was so important to us. And there was a real excitement because I feel like it didn't come from this place of just, oh, morally that's what you should do. There was a genuine excitement. I was able to help contribute to a cause that matters to me, and building that excitement at a young age meant that there was an excitement when the platform came around to say, wow, now people are listening in a way that I'd never expected. And I don't think I would have been prepared for that leap had I not had spaces to voice my opinion before. If somebody had handed me a mic for the first time when I was on a show and then said, what do you think about the world? I would have been so ill prepared, but it was because I kept being in spaces where I had adults that cared enough to have a conversation with a little kid. To be like, oh, what do you think about that? Whether it's a home space, a space with friends, a space with mentors, it's important to have a moment to form your opinion on the world, because this feeling that we should come out with this fully fleshed, perfect opinion and a perfect way to execute upon it is just so impractical. And I had so much growing that happened privately before I did anything publicly. And then a lot of growing publicly.
How were you effectively able to determine, like, this is how much I am comfortable giving while still being able to effectively take care of myself, especially knowing that in the entertainment business, some years it's raining money and some years it's dry.
I don't really work with a hard and fast number. And it's something that I've actually been thinking about, like, oh, maybe it is time to institute a percentage of this, of that, because I definitely see how I could benefit from that. It's surreal to be young and making money, and I definitely feel the guilt and shame of having money at times.
And you shouldn't.
I shouldn't, but it definitely means when there was a cause that's close to my heart, it felt weird to not be like, well, what's the biggest amount you can give?
All of it?
Yeah, all of it. I even took a racial capitalism class while I was in school. And boy, oh boy, was I a nuisance, because I was like, there's no ethical way to make money. I'm stopping all work.
No conscious consumerism under capitalism.
Yes. It truly brought me to such a place of inaction, because I was so overwhelmed by these conversations of being like, well, I'm somebody that's been put on this planet to want to make an impact, whatever that looks like. And okay, I'm being told that there really is no great way to make money without the exploitation of other people, but I haven't come up with an alternative. So rather than doing something differently, I just wasn't doing anything at all. Finally, when I moved through that hump, through lots of conversations, I think what it brought up was, okay, I clearly want to be more anchored in being of service. What does that look like? So I can continuously feel better about how my money is working, not only for me, but for my community at large.
So it's better to not stick your head in the sand. It's better to actually get mad and then do something about it.
And so I think throughout the years, the way it's evolved in terms of figuring out what to give and how to give was also dividing categories of what giving looks like. So there was the financial category, and then there's the category of time and other resources. And I think it allowed me to create a more holistic idea of, by the end of the year, how much will I have given?
Is there a specific cause that you're really, really passionate about today?
The issue is I deal with scope creep. Like, one thing points to another. The reason I had even gotten into voting work was it was totally a cop-out, because you got to talk about every issue in one thing, where I was like, yes, perfect. I love voting because I love women's rights and education and this and this and this. Right now, I think truly the largest continuity in my life has been education. I got to feel in charge of my education. I got to have an experience that made me enjoy those spaces, and I feel like I pulled so much from it. And education equity, really on every level, has been so important to me because I wish so many of my peers had that opportunity. My experience of going to college was so privileged because I had a career, and so where so many of my friends were dealing with the numbers of you could be a person of color at an Ivy League and have the same opportunity as someone that's dominant culture at a state school. So even the fact that you put in all this work doesn't necessarily translate to business opportunities, doesn't translate to a job offer. Seeing that pressure is continually heartbreaking because I got to go in and just really revel in my curiosity. I got to say, I'm taking a class on hip hop, and then I'm taking a class on healthcare, and then I'm taking a class on this. But it was only because I had this job beforehand where I wasn't thinking about what looks good on a resume, what ups my chances of being able to come out and pay for how expensive my education was. And so I think really at every level, that has been something I've continuously been concerned about, how to make classrooms more equitable.
Can I ask, this is so bold, but do you think your Harvard education was worth it looking back?
Great question. I'd have to say yes, but it comes from the perspective of I had Harvard paid for in high school because of how I set my money aside. And so I think some of that pressure being off, of being like, this is handled, is what made it worth it. I didn't have to constantly think about, is it worth it this semester? As I'm looking at the bill. I knew that I'd wanted to go to college from really elementary school. Before I had Harvard in mind, I was asking my gramps to be like, will you be my college roommate when I make it to college?
Yeah, that's so cute.
So it is something that I constantly interrogate because I feel like it being worth it for me was so contingent on being like, I knew what professors were there and who I wanted to study under. I knew what experiences and opportunities were afforded to me being on that campus at that time. And so I feel like I got my money's worth in that way, not because of the name, but because of the experience it curated. When I see just how much work so many of my peers have to put in, even though you have a big name school behind you, it's debatable because at the end of the day, we all get educated. It doesn't matter what the school is.
I want to talk about what's coming up next. You and your production partner, AKA Mom, who's on set with us today. Tell me a little bit about the production company you've created together. What's it like working with Mom? And, you know, what you guys have coming up.
Some people may know her as Chocolate Mommy Love on Instagram or as Yara Shahidi. I have a creative and business partner who not only has a master's in business and has had a career in the nonprofit space, has had a career as a creative. Everything that she brings is so invaluable because our values aligned about why we're in this industry to begin with, which is how do we make impact? So much of the work of producing is not only being able to bring shows to life that we really enjoy, but it is these conversations we're talking about infrastructure, about saying, how do we use our space here to be able to bring people in to certain studio systems, to be able to give certain opportunities. There's a lot of kind of economic justice that happens even within certain studio systems or certain institutions when you have people that have certain values helping make decisions about how people make money. To be blunt, this work can at times feel meaningless when the world is on fire. And I think that's why our partnership means so much to me, is because we're always searching for purpose and meaning, whether it's in the creative industry or outside of it. And it's nice to know that I have a partner in that journey.
How has it also been navigating now being on the production side, like seeing which projects actually do get funding and get funded?
Boy, oh boy. And education. And education, given there's so many reasons shows go, don't go. I've been on shows as an actor where they were taking down the sign, episode 7, while we were pulling up. And they're like, they didn't tell you it was canceled.
Oh, no.
But I think on the production side, you really get a firsthand look at all of the things that go into making decisions. A lot of it's subjective. A lot of it is random data on audiences. But then also I think why we have felt so inspired is that oftentimes when you see stories centering people of color, people of really any marginalized community, the common pattern is that the stakes have to be so high for people to care, or you have to do a little extra work to explain why this storyline is actually universal. And so after being in the room, it's been nice to not only build a team that we love, but then to also strategically be able to have partners that we know are actively doing the work of figuring out, knowing the infrastructure is never going to be perfect, but who are the partners that are aware of that and excited to help usher in what this next generation of television is.
What a great way for us to wrap.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Yara. This has been an incredible conversation. I mean, I felt like I was just talking to the smartest TA on campus. You are truly so, so brilliant. And I'm so grateful for all of the information and insights you shared with me today and everybody at home.
Thank you. I'm so psyched to be on this, and I'm truly so grateful. I've been following you on social forever and grateful for what you do in the world because so many of us need this info.
That's all we have for today's episode. Make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons and follow SoFi on Instagram and TikTok. See you next time.
Hey, Mark.
Cool, wow. Lobster mac and cheese. Someone's splurged.
Yeah. How did this turn out to be $150 a person?
We could have had a picnic. And that's that. End of question.